the shoe. And there you have it. The show is off to a roaring start. This is the Sports Porch Pittsburgh. You are watching us currently live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, all over the world. And you can also listen live on our sister radio station. It's called Radio PGH. And I'm going to put that link right there in the comments for you. It should be popping up, radiopgh.com. Listen live if you don't want to watch in the car. And yes, we're going to drop the podcast right after the show on the Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get your friggin' podcasts. And you can find us online at theporcheslive.com, theporcheslive.com.
Theporcheslive.com.
You got it. You got it. Now, listen, guys, we do have one line open, as always. Schwaber likes to remind us. You can call us at 412.
Good time to get in.
805-7236 if you're watching. If you're listening to the podcast, sorry about that. Maybe listen and watch the live show and you can get in. But, man, listen, here, let's jump right in. Canada is gone. We already knew that. Steelers Nation rejoices. We already knew that. I actually meant to change this, and I didn't hit the save button. What I'm going to put up here right now is 420 yards, only 16 points. What changed? What changed? So I'm going to let you guys take the lead on this. Of course, this was all over, talk radio today. It was all over all of the NFL stuff on, the NFL network, on ESPN. Like, all of a sudden, for the first time in 58 games, the Pittsburgh Steelers finally put up over 400 yards of offense. Canada's gone. Faulkner's scheming. He's doing the game plan. Sullivan's calling the plays. They were throwing over the middle to Freiermuth. They were taking shots downfield. The running game looked good, but God, they put up 16 points. So do we see anything wrong with this picture? Go ahead, Schwaber, because Steve always wants to go last. He always wants to go last.
Sure. Well, I mean, okay, let's go with the positives first. The positives are they looked a lot better offensively than they've looked in a long time. Probably prior to Matt Canada being with the team. Although in fairness, they did have a game a couple weeks back where they scored like on their first three possessions. So in fairness, but the key is that they weren't afraid to throw the ball down the middle of the field. They did a great job getting Freiermuth involved in the offense, and he went over 100 yards. I think had 9 catches, so that was big. They utilized all their playmakers on offense very well. Pickens, did some damage on his end, even though he didn't get, a lot of yards or a touchdown. He made important catches. I would say that, obviously Deontay Johnson's probably a sidebar chat for later in the program. He's always fun. But, look, so the first part of it is, look, no matter who you're playing. Now, look, did they play a bad team yesterday? Yes, they did. They played a bad team. They played a bad defense and a bad offense. But I'm sure that somewhere in those 44 games of which they did not have 400 yards of offense prior, they probably played some pretty bad teams too. So, you play who you play. And so it was a positive sign. To me, it made it seem like Kenny Pickett, look, I'm not ready to say that he's going to be really good or anything. I mean, he still only has 6 touchdowns, I think, in 11 games.
Mm-hmm.
But he looked more serviceable yesterday than he did really at any other point in the season, I'd say. So those were the positives. I think just the only negatives were just not putting up more points, and the fact that it wasn't really against great competition. But overall, I mean, I think you have to be pleased with the win. And it's nothing new. They're winning these close games against teams that they are better than.
Mm-hmm.
I think that overall it was definitely like a weight was lifted. The cloud of Matt Canada and that situation definitely affected the morale on the field and the offense and the way it played. I think that it was also an indictment as to his, as if we needed another indictment as to his play calling ability, because what I saw yesterday was I saw an offense that looked structurally very similar to the Matt Canada offense. And we all knew it's not like they were going to institute a new playbook. But what they did do, and DG is in the house. What's up, DG? He said, we've been talking about this the whole time, hitting Freiermuth up the seam. Who could have thunk it? Now, yeah, Freiermuth has been out for a couple weeks, but they weren't doing that before. And I think what we saw is they kind of took the reins off of Kenny and they said, okay, listen, we're going to call some plays. We're going to work with you on how to locate your receivers. We're going to work with you on timing. The offensive line is definitely playing better. And we're going to throw the ball downfield. And I'll tell you, if they can throw the ball downfield, and here's the kicker, and score, then this team is a much more dangerous team. So I'm with you, Steve, and you can go next after this sentence. I'm with you on the thought process that at 7-4, given what I saw yesterday, that there is a chance that this team could be a lot better than they've looked overall. The problem is, for me, is that I think over the last 2 years, the Trubisky Pickett debacle into this year, I actually think that these guys don't know how to score touchdowns. And what I mean by that is, of course, they're professional football players. They know what they're supposed to do is score a touchdown. But I think the play calling and the offensive scheming has been so dink and dunk and conservative that they've never really gone for the score. They've never gone for the jugular. They've never gone into a series, a possession, with the intent of scoring. I think they've gone into possessions with the intent of not making mistakes. So that's the bad thing I saw about this game against Cincinnati. In my opinion, you break out for 420 yards, you're putting up more than one touchdown on offense. You have to do that. Now, I'm willing to say that this was the game where they kind of exhaled. And it was a good game to exhale because you knew that the Bengals quarterback was going to amount to nothing. Thank God they didn't lose that game, because that would be a classic Steelers loss. But they didn't. They won. So I see some good things, but the jury is back to, instead of saying, Pickett's got to go, Canada's got to go, all this kind of stuff. The jury for me is back to, all right, now we're going to get a reboot. So the next game, Cardinals.
Yeah.
Yep. 1:00 here.
The 2-win Cardinals.
Got to score points. One comment before you go, Steve. Marvin Hamilton chimes in. Thanks for being here, Marvin. There's a lot of QBs coming out this year. If Kenny Pickett doesn't get better, he's gone and they will draft someone new. I doubt that. He says they're going to destroy the Cardinals. Let's hope you're right about that. So take it away, Hockey Jesus. Tell us how you feel.
Well, Marvin, you might want to close your ears for this one, because you're not going to like what I'm about to say. The great thing about the Pittsburgh Steelers offense is they can find a way to score enough points just to beat the team they're playing against, right? So when they play against teams like the Cardinals and the Patriots, who are coming up the next 2 games, guess what? It's going to be the same old shit. And it'll drive Steelers fans crazy. Why can't we score 24 points? Why can't we score 35 points against these shitty teams? Well, guess what? They're not geared to do that. That's not who the Steelers are. That's not their identity. I know I've been pushing this for a few weeks now because I figured it out about week 4. And where the Steelers are only going to do what is necessary to win the game. They're not going to look at stats. They're not going to run up the score. They're not going to try and step on the gas pedal to go up 21-0. They just want to meander through the game in whatever way the game's playing out so that they have a chance to win the game in the fourth quarter, whether if that's through a defensive stand or an offensive touchdown or field goal. That's who these Steelers are. And I know that's going to upset some people, but that's really their identity when it comes down to it. The difference between this team and the team that played last week is, you're right, Matt Canada is gone, so they are utilizing the center part of the field. They had their best first down yardage. It was something like 6 or 7 yards on first down in like 3 years. So they're trying to get that first down yardage so that it's big enough so that they can do different things. And here's what I'll have to say about 400 yards and scoring 16 points. You're absolutely right, Chris. That does seem like an abomination, but they have finally been doing some things which I like to see. They've got Washington out there now blocking. He was the lead blocker on that Najee touchdown, right?
Yes.
What they're going to do is they're going to be setting that up for a play action pass where they're going to be throwing at the ball to Washington now, or maybe Freiermuth, or maybe it'll be Deontay on the outside or Pickens on a fade route. But these Steelers are so slow at getting these things together. It's sickening. It really is sickening. But I totally have faith that this team has, now that Canada is gone, has, like you said, excelled a little bit and now is ready to take on the garbage, which is the next 2 games. And I think that was probably by design, because you look at that Cincinnati team, clearly that Cincinnati team is garbage without Joe Burrow.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the other thing you have to look at too is they're getting Minka back, right? That's a really positive thing. And on top of that, Joey Porter Jr. actually looks like he might be a shutdown cornerback. I know that, Jamar Chase had a jabroni throwing him the ball, but 4 catches for 80 yards, and 2 of those were off of dinks or dunks or deflections that could have easily gone as an interception, and it did go for 40 yards either way. I think they got something good going on with Joey Porter. Is he the shutdown corner in the NFL? Absolutely not. But he doesn't have to be, because they don't play against great wide receivers until they make it to the playoffs.
Yeah, the jury's out on Joey Porter, but he's not looking too bad.
I mean, before the Steelers were always, if you didn't get to the quarterback, the defensive backs were toast. They would get toasted. It's not that way anymore. I mean, TJ's, I think maybe 3rd or 4th in the league in sacks, right? So he's not even up there.
I think he's actually 2nd now, but
either way, he's not the dominant. He's not the dominant guy he was last couple years. And yes, he still wreaks havoc in his position. Don't get me wrong. He's still a change maker, but he's not somebody you have to rely on week after week. And yes, Marvin, I do think they will stick with Kenny Pickett. Yeah,
no
matter what happens, the Steelers are stuck with Kenny Pickett for the next 2 years.
Marvin,
after that. So I did a little research here, and I want to get your opinion on this, Steve.
Hold on, let me get these comments in real quick. Marvin says 28-7 Steelers. Mike Lawrence, wonder why Tomlin didn't challenge the no touchdown.
Yeah, that was dumb.
He gave a dumb excuse for it at his press conference, by the way.
Hey, you know what? Can I make a mention about that no touchdown?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, here's the thing, guys. I swear to God, like I know on the call on the game that the rules guy is saying you get a third foot down and you don't have to survive the ground. Is it just me, or is that the first time I've ever heard that? Like, you always have to survive the ground. I totally understand why Mike Tomlin thought there was no shot.
Well,
I don't even get it at all. Like I've
what's up-
never heard you get a third thing down, you don't survive the ground.
basically what
I
Tomlin
don't
said
know.
in his news conference was that he didn't really see that replay. So he wasn't sure. But I honestly don't think
That's his own damn fault.
I know, but I don't
Yeah.
even think it was a touchdown anyway, to be honest with you. I don't think there was enough to overturn it. I think that official was wrong. I think it was the right call not challenging it, because you didn't, at that point in the game, you didn't want to lose a challenge. Marvin also says, do you think they will really stick with Kenny Pickett if he continues to miss receivers this year? Definitely. DG, Steelers don't want to be the team that scores 30 points a game. They want to be a run first, ball control offense. Yeah, you know what, DG, we've talked about this all year, and so Steve. Yes, they do want to be that. But I guess the point I'm making is that if you're putting up 400 yards, you're scoring, and you're an average offense, you're scoring more than one touchdown and 3 field goals. It's just going to be natural. So, all right, Schwaber, what are those?
Hey, Mark, by the way, I did look that up. It is true. A third step, 2 feet down in another body part. And by the way, I'm sure Steeler fans will remember this. The reason that got put in was because of that Patriots game where Gentry scored a touchdown, and they called it back because they said he fumbled it as he went over the goal line, which was ridiculous.
So if you
anyway,
do get
sorry,
if you do get a third body part down, you don't have to survive the ground.
If you get a third foot, if you get a third foot in, or if you like get another if your butt's down,
body part,
then you're down. Yeah, then you're
okay.
down.
Well,
2 feet, 2 feet and an ass, or 3 feet.
Okay. Well, I've learned something.
Yeah.
All right. So, I was looking this up because here's the thing. Like, I've still been scratching my head all year about, are the Steelers a good defense or are they not a good defense? And well, one thing for sure, they're number 1 in turnovers, so that does mark a category off of being a good defense.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you've also got the bend don't break where they give up a ton of yards. And that's one of those things where you wonder, are they going to be able to sustain the turnovers, blah 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 blah. So I decided to look a little bit.
25th in yards allowed. That's what
so I decided to look a little deeper into it, and I think I've actually found the issue.
Hey,
okay?
Kyle.
Kyle's in the house. What's up, Kyle? Go ahead, Schwaber. What's the issue?
The issue is, and it's just really quite simple, is that the defense has been able to get away with bend don't break and making turnovers because the quarterback play they've played against has been really, really bad. And what I looked at, at least for me, I mean, other people might have different opinions. I think the probably the best statistic to determine good quarterback play is like what your QBR is. And so in their 3 losses, well, they have 4 losses total. The DTR loss is just a bad loss, so just throw that one out, okay? But in their 3 other losses, they lost the top 10 quarterbacks. So it was Purdy, number 1 QBR, Stroud, number 8 QBR, Lawrence, number 9 QBR. The best QBR they've beaten is Lamar Jackson, who's number 12. And then it's Stafford, number 15, Love, number 19, Watson, number 24. You had 3 guys who aren't ranked either because they haven't played enough games or it was like their first start. Okay. So it was like, Browning, Levis, and Garoppolo. But here's the good news. The good news on this is that in the remaining 6 games, the best quarterback they will play will be Lamar Jackson, which is number 12. Now this I think is maybe an anomaly, but somehow Gardner Minshew was number 13 on the list. Okay.
Right,
but Mac Jones was number 28, and then they're going to go Browning, Mary's not ranked because he doesn't have enough games, and then DTR, Walker, or Flacco, who are also unranked. So the good news is schedule lines up nicely for them to continue to be able to sustain this kind of defensive effort. Bad news, I think, is when you get to the first playoff game, you're probably going to play a top 12 quarterback. And that's where I think they can run into trouble. Because I think those quarterbacks are going to score touchdowns, whereas, the ones that are further back just don't. Because either because a Steelers defense that's pretty good is better, or they just aren't good enough quarterbacks to really get you over the goal line.
All right, let's get some comments. And DG says 400 yards would have been more points with Deontay's missed touchdown and Warren hadn't fumbled. They were able to move the ball. That's a good point. They probably should have scored. They would have scored more. Kyle, let's go black and gold. Marvin Hamilton, do you think they will bring in Byron Leftwich? Anne Marie, they should have.
Maybe they'll look at him at the end of the season, Marvin. I think they'll probably. I think they'll definitely give him a look. He fits the bill for who the Steelers hire. People who are once Steelers, people who have already had experience and have won Super Bowls doing it. And 3 is they like him.
Yeah, I think the jury, and you hear it all over talk radio, all over the internet, everywhere. What happens if their offense really takes off and it's 350 plus yards a game and they start scoring points and they win a game in the playoffs? Does that mean Faulkner is the OC? That's entirely possible.
If they win the Super Bowl with them, they're not going to go out and get somebody.
Yeah, that's a far-fetched. I'm talking about what if he does remarkably better than, what if it looks like and Kenny is going to have some say in this too. If he's super comfortable with Sully and Faulkner, why do you want to mess up his jam if that's if they're doing well?
Nah, I don't think Kenny will have a say so. He's just too young. He doesn't know what he needs, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you could be right, but I think the real takeaway from this is that there's no way that we're going to know exactly what they do. We know what they've done based on history, so we can make a pretty good assumption on that. But
so nobody has a comment on all that research on QBR that I did.
No, I do. I think it's actually spot on because
I think you wasted your time.
Thanks for that, technique.
I'm ornery. Go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
Shut off your own mic while you're at it.
All right, I'm doing.
There, that's much better.
Much better.
No, actually, I think you're right. I think the way to beat the Steelers' defense is with a smart quarterback, and that doesn't necessarily mean throwing the ball all the time, but taking what's given to you because. And being able to get the ball into the end zone. And see, that's what the 49ers did against the Steelers in week 1. And I know week 1 was a long time ago, but I think that's a really good recipe for beating the Steelers. 1, you got to be able to run the ball on us. 2, you have to be able to take what's given. And 3, you have to score when you get down into the 20 because you're going to get down into the 20 like 3 or 4 times on this defense because that's exactly how they play. So, and unless the defense can get a takeaway, whether it's a scoop and score or just an interception or just a fumble to save themselves, then they get in trouble because this offense doesn't know how to play from behind. They just can't do it. I mean, they're just not capable of doing it. So that's how you beat the Steelers. You go up by 14-0, you go up by 17-3, and you just basically run the ball from that point on because the Steelers defense will get tired and they won't be able to make those big splash plays that have kept them in games all the time. And I wouldn't discount them losing one of these next 2 games just because of the way their defense plays. And unless their defense can somehow make Kyler Murray, fumble the ball 2 or 3 times, which is possible. The guy is pretty turnover happy. He will definitely get some splash plays against the Steelers, unless, of course, my theory about Joey Porter Jr. is correct. And they do now have a shutdown corner who they can put on the guy who turns out being the guy. And I think that's Rondell Moore for them, but they have a couple guys who can catch the ball. And let's face it, James Conner is going to come in with a chip on his shoulder. He's going to want to run over some Steelers
but he's a turnover machine too.
He is.
So guys, So I also kind of knocked this out in terms of, now, would you guys agree with this? Whether these teams win their division, or I'm also going to say if they don't win their division, they're going to be a wild card. That's your 4 division leaders at this point. You got Baltimore, Kansas City, Jacksonville, Miami. Would you say those 4 teams are in, barring something crazy like an injury, major injury?
Most likely,
right?
Yeah,
I would say
Okay.
that's true.
Okay. So now what you got is you got the 5th seed and the 6th seed. Pittsburgh and Cleveland are 7 and 4. You've got Indy and Houston and Denver are 6 and 5. And you've got Buffalo is 6 and 6. So I'd say it's 3 teams. 3 teams are going to make it out of those 6 playoff contenders. And what I looked at was win percentage. Actually, Denver, of all teams, believe it or not, has the easiest win percentage left.
Right.
Which is 43.3, opponents win percentage.
right.
Steelers are second at 44. Cleveland and Houston tied for third at 47%. Indianapolis 47.8%, and Buffalo, with a really hard schedule, 54.5%.
Yeah.
So the question is, with all these teams separate now, 2 in the loss column, stuff like that, but just in terms of wins, these 6 teams are all separated by 1 game. Do you think? I think this is my feeling. You could get in with 10 wins. I think you get in with 11 wins no matter what. I think that's a pretty safe bet. So basically the Steelers would have to go 4 and 2 to finish 11 and 6. Okay. So with that being said, do you think that the next 2 games against the 2-win Cardinals and the 2-win who is the other one they're playing?
Patriots.
Yeah, the Patriots. Do you think that those, in a sense, are almost like must wins?
Yes. I do. I think both the Cardinals and Patriots are must wins if you're looking at the playoffs here. The Colts are playing well. Doesn't matter what you think about their quarterback, their coach, or anything like that. They're playing well. And they're playing in Indianapolis. Now the Bengals are coming back into town. Who knows what kind of team's going to show up there? But once again, it's an AFC North matchup. Hey, we played against Browning and we had to win 16-10. Okay. Then you got the Seahawks. We're going on the West Coast, and you finish up with the Ravens, which if the Ravens collapse, that could be a game for the division, but it's not going to happen. So yes, I do think the Cardinals and the Patriots in the next 2 games, they are must wins. Now, Hamilton, I almost said Marvin Harrison, Hall of Fame receiver, says Cleveland will drop out. I think we all agree there. Mike Lawrence.
Yeah, I agree with you, Marvin.
Is it time for this? Deontay, first reception, he runs backwards. That was classic. I don't even think he knew where he was on the team.
He did.
Field. Then he stands with his thumb up his ass on the Warren fumble. Will the Steelers bench or fine him? They're not going to do either. That's what I gather.
But anyway, let's get back to Deontay in a minute. But I definitely think, look, I think, you've got New England, Arizona, Cincinnati. I think you should win those games.
Mm-hmm.
That gets you to 10 wins. And then you just have to win 1 game out of Colts,
Seahawks,
Ravens, and Seahawks. And I think Colts and Seahawks are certainly there for the taking.
Right.
And you could even argue Baltimore, because it's a division game and they always play close and Lamar doesn't play well. But that's the last game anyway, So
well, and if that might be a soft game too.
I think if you win 4 of those 5, putting aside the Baltimore game, I think you're in, no doubt about it. I think even if you win 3 of 6,
yep,
you might get in. Because I do think that Cleveland is going to fall apart.
Oh yeah.
Because they've got no quarterback now.
No.
Although there was good news on Myles Garrett that he didn't actually injure himself. He said he heard a pop, so
Yeah,
everybody
Mitch
thought he
told
was going to be done for the year, but
Right.
apparently he was fine today with his results. And I mean, look, Buffalo's got too hard a schedule, probably. Denver, I mean, what, they won 5 in a row? Are they going to keep that up? I don't know. I actually like Houston to make it. If I had to choose the 3 teams that are going to make it, assuming, let's say, I'm going to say Baltimore wins the division, although it could be close. I'm going to say I like Houston, Indianapolis, and Pittsburgh to make the playoffs out of those 6.
I'm just going
What
to
do
go
you-
with what you said.
I don't know. I'm torn because I don't feel comfortable with the Cardinals and the Patriots, but likewise, I don't think they're going to do terrible at the Colts and at the Seahawks, and they got the Bengals at home. So I don't look at these 2 games as must wins because the rest of their schedule is so crappy. I think if the Steelers actually got really good all of a sudden and scored 24 points, I think they could run. I think they could run the season. And I've never said that before, by the way. But if somehow this offense can score 24 points, they could easily beat all of those teams because those teams aren't. Maybe the Colts might score more than 24 points, but the Cardinals aren't going to. The Patriots aren't going to. The Bengals aren't going to at home. Seahawks might score that at home against the Steelers, maybe. But if the Steelers are on a 5-game win streak going into there, I mean, and the Seahawks have really been kind of decimated with injuries. They can make a run at it, honestly. I mean, I know that sounds crazy and it sounds like a Steeler fan, but the teams they're playing aren't very good. They're not good
They're
at all.
not. The schedule is in their favor for sure.
It
Yeah,
is. And Schwaber, you don't have to keep your door closed anymore. Amy knows what you do with your time now. let's
But it's interesting though, because here's the thing. Now, see, I was listening to this on The Fan, and I thought it was a little crazy, but I can understand how you can make a point that it's not totally absurd. But they were talking, this morning that Steelers are only 1 game out of the win column, or no, 1 game out of the loss column, right?
Yep.
In terms of actually being the number 1 seed.
Yep.
And I think that's kind of crazy because I look at this team and I just think, how can a team that barely beats all these bad teams, how could they possibly be a 1 seed? Or how could they possibly beat Baltimore to win the division? But it's not completely, absurd just with the fact that the way the schedule plays
right.
out.
And the NFL is all about the dubs. Doesn't matter how you get there, just win, baby. And that's the truth. So, I think that goes to Steve's point about being all in on the Steelers right now, because, an ugly Super Bowl win is still a Super Bowl win. And it's really easy to look at the team and break it down the way we do constantly and say that they don't match up this way and they don't match up that way. And this player is better than that player. And this coach is better than that coach. And all of that is true. But the bottom line is it is the NFL, and any team at any time it's been demonstrated over time and time again. Any team on any given Sunday, or now Monday or Thursday or Friday or soon to be Saturday, most likely Tuesdays as well. I'm looking forward to the days where I don't have to wait a day to watch football, because it's coming, boys. But so it's not out of the question. It's not out of the question. Wins are that's how you get to the promised land. You win. So can this team win? The answer is yes. That is and has been the perplexing situation that we as Steelers fans and Steelers Nation has been in for the last couple of years. Because in spite of the fact that when you watch the product they put on the field, as far as offense goes, it looks like dirt, somehow they managed to get a winning record. And so how do you not root for that? You don't. You have to root for it. Canada being gone, definitely a good thing. Now, for me personally, now I want to see a little bit more scoring, because the way I feel is, yeah, dubs matter. They matter. No doubt. That's all that matters, is that you have one more point than the other guy. That's it. But you're not going to be able to sustain a 16-point average and win through the rest of this season. That is just highly improbable. So they're going to have to take that offense and the confidence that they gained, and they're going to have to start putting up 2 touchdowns in a game, maybe a couple field goals, get a turnover, get me to 21 points a game. And I'm feeling much better about your prospects going into, first of all, possibly the playoffs this year, and second of all, next year with Kenny Pickett. Because to answer everybody's question, and we get this question every week, yes, Kenny Pickett is the guy until the Steelers decide he's not the guy. I don't think there's any question about that right now. So I don't think that we need to even think about another quarterback until the end of next year, and he's a total bust. Marvin says, who do you got? And then we're going to go to the Deontay question, because we got to get to our picks here. Marvin says, who do you guys like as a starter, Warren or Harris? I want to take this one, Steve, because I agree with Steve.
You know my answer. It's yes.
I know your answer. Both of them. I agree with Steve from this standpoint. I think Warren is clearly the better, more talented back. He can make more things happen. He's always in the hunt for more yardage. He can create something out of nothing. Najee is the guy who demonstrated yesterday with that great run when he had like 7 defenders hanging on him and he ran through, like, it looked like a tunnel. He's a great change of pace guy. He's a great guy whose legs never stop moving. He did rush for 99 yards yesterday. I like the 1-2 punch now. And that all falls around a couple things. First of all, the line is playing much, much better now that Broderick Jones is in there and they're using Washington as a blocking tight end. I'd like to see him be a receiver a little bit more because he's huge. He's just huge. You can't bring him down. He's going to catch the ball. But I like the 1-2 punch. I like them featuring Warren, but he is not a 3-down back. He's just too small. He's just too small. He's not going to be able to take the beating that Najee can. So that's my answer to that. I think you guys agree with me. If you don't, chime in. But if you do, I'm going to move on to Deontay. Deontay Johnson, I think, is a punk. He's a punk. Okay. He's a punk. Now I don't know him personally, so I could be totally wrong about this guy, but I just don't like his attitude. But what are they going to do to him? Nothing. They're not going to do anything. Okay.
He's got talent, but he is just a losing player.
Yeah. Well, and he claims he didn't see the fumble. And when you watch the replay, I wonder how he didn't see it, because he was looking right at it. But he was looking in the direction, but the ball was on the ground. So maybe he didn't see it. Plus, you had a couple other Steelers guys. Broderick Jones was standing there. He wasn't doing anything. I think it was one of those bang, bang plays where it was kind of like everything happened, and before you knew it, you were standing there. So I don't necessarily agree with all of the vitriol across the internet and on Twitter about that. But what I don't like is when I hear that that it's one thing to be vocal and passionate. It's another thing when sources are saying that you actually become confrontational. And he still runs the wrong way.
Right. Well, you know what the thing is with Deontay? Here's the thing with Deontay that sums it up. It's always him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he's not a team player. He's a good talent. He would do better if he had a Belichick type boss who said, just get out there and play the damn game and shut up, or you're going to get benched. But Tomlin will never do that with him. So this is what happens in a Tomlin system, where Tomlin lets players be who they are. And
right.
Unfortunately, he's a victim of Mike Tomlin's coaching. That's really what it comes down to. It. How many times have we seen it since AB? maybe even before that, but certainly AB is the poster child for
Well,
that.
and he let Juju get away with it, and that was
Right.
horrible.
I mean, that's his coaching style. He lets players be players, and it's hard to get to be a team when you let players do that. At some point, you have to say, "Hey, reel it in, bud. Like, you're a team now. This week you're getting 3 catches and that's it. Next week we might need you to catch 8. So get ready for the game where you have to catch 8."
Okay, so in our predictions and our beginning of the year predictions, we all took the Steelers to win, to beat Arizona, so we'll just stick with that. We're going to move on to our picks now. Our picks for this week's game. Last week, Mark and Steve are 3-0, so Mark is now 24-9. Steve is 19-14, and I was 2-1, but I still lost ground, 13-20. It's going to take a miracle for me to come back.
Better than 13-200.
Yeah, that's true. It's where I was last week. Okay, this week's game, Thursday night, Seahawks at Cowboys. Schwaber, who you got?
I'll take the Cowboys. It looks like the Seahawks are losing some flap of their wings.
Yeah, the Cowboys are playing at home, so I'm just going to chime in and say I'm taking the Cowboys.
Make it 3, boys. Make it 3.
Okay.
By the way, the Steelers play next Thursday night, so we'll have to pick another game.
Oh, you mean the following Thursday? Okay.
Yeah.
Sunday night's game, Chiefs at the Packers.
I think the Chiefs will handle the Packers.
Well,
Although I'll tell you what, though, Jordan Love.
He looks good.
Do the Chiefs play
man
man-to-man? Do the Chiefs play a man-to-man defense? I guess he's like the whisperer of touchdown passes when he plays against man-to-man defense. He's got the best QBR against man-to-man defenses. I still got to go with the Chiefs. I think that's going to be an ugly game. It's not going to be a game that I want to watch.
Yeah, I'm going with the Chiefs too. All right, in our pick'em game, this is actually a good game now that the Broncos and the Texans are back in the playoff hunt. Broncos at Texans.
I will go Houston Texans. I believe in CJ Stroud.
That's a tough call. I really want to go with CJ Stroud too, but I think that doink off the field goal that went short. I think that's a heart crusher. I think they really thought they were going to have a chance at the division. Now they don't. I'm going to go with
they cut him today, by the way. The kicker.
Well, they should have.
Yeah, they should have. I mean, come on. It was a 56-yard field goal or something ridiculous.
And he donked.
Anyway.
I mean, he basically made it. It just bounced the wrong way.
Right.
Well, and they couldn't get a single. And I was watching that game. They couldn't get a single yard in 3 plays.
Yeah,
it was ridiculous.
They
made it hard on him.
I'd like to submit to the rules committee that if you donk it off the crossbar, not the sides, that it gives you a half point.
That's ridiculous.
Did you see that? That would destroy Vegas.
That may be the dumbest thing you've ever said.
It's really up there.
It's definitely not the dumbest thing I've ever said.
I'm telling you, it's that dumb.
Okay.
That is really dumb. I'm going with Denver. I'm going with Denver.
Steve, I'm going with Denver too, because I like what Russell Wilson is doing there and Sean Payton. Okay, listen, guys, thanks for watching on Facebook Live, on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, all over the world. And of course, you can always catch us live on radiopgh.com. If you can't watch this in your car, which I would suggest you not do, I would suggest you listen to Radio PGH. And we do drop the podcast right after the show on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Subscribe, leave a review, catch up with us. Now we're going to move on to something that we just absolutely love, and that's a guy named Hockey Jesus. He is
Amen.
And Hockey Jesus preaches on the Sports Porch podcast on the iHeartRadio app or anywhere you podcast after every single Penguins game. So Hockey Jesus is going to preach right now. You were at the Rangers game. They lost 1-0. If you have anything to say about the Penguins, we do have a line open, 412-805-7236 if you're watching us live. So take it away, Your Highness.
Well, according to everybody, the Pittsburgh Penguins are playing much better than their record says it is. I actually don't think that. I believe that they are exactly who they are, a 10-10 team. I mean, they had a really good streak there on the West Coast where they had 5 games in a row where they scored points, but in their last 6 games, they've only gotten 4 points, 2 against Vegas, which was a great win. And then that 2 against Toronto the other night was probably their best win of the season. And I say that because they only scored 3 goals. When in 3-goal games where the Penguins score 3 goals, they're only 2-2. So they actually only have 3 total wins when they score 3 goals or less. So they need to win more 3-goal games. And the way they did that was by getting the goal just before the period ended and actually played a really smart third period, which the game before when they lost to Buffalo, they had a 2-0 lead going into the third and lost 3-2. So that's what they have to continue to work at is getting that third period lead going into the third period and holding it. It doesn't sound hard, but for the Pittsburgh Penguins who just want to skate up and down the ice and like to get caught up in that action, it becomes a problem for them in the third period, especially a team that's as old as these Penguins. They just run out of juice, and that's it.
Right.
The thing that's got me completely worried, and I don't even know where to go with this, is their power play. It is god awful. I think it's the worst.
Really
I think it's the worst in the league. I mean, I don't care what the stats say. I look at it. They don't get any shots. They have no system. They have a hard time getting into the zone. And it is absolutely horrible. It's terrible. They got to either break up some of that talent or they got to do something else or fire the guy who's writing the plays for that power play because it's terrible. They got to put guys, this moving around bullshit, it's got to end. They say, you go here, you go here, you go here. We go tic-tac-toe and we try and score. And then if it doesn't work, we get the puck and we try it again. That's what best power plays do. They have a trigger man who shoots it and is really good at shooting it. Unfortunately, I think Gino has been the trigger man on the power play, and his shot isn't what it used to be. He only has 1 goal in the last 7 games. So that's terrible for Gino. And actually, I was reading an interview on I forget where I was reading it from. Anyway, he was basically saying, I love this team. I just hate me right now because he's not been playing very well. And I agree with that. I think he definitely needs to pick up his game. One of the things they cited, and I keep forgetting this about Gino, he needs his family so much. Like when his family's not around, he'll go into this shell of just being miserable and you can't get him out of it. So I guess his wife and his kid, Nikita, I think is his son's name. I think they're up for a little bit, but the problem is they live down in Florida. So the good thing is they're actually going to be in Florida next week. So maybe he'll get some sun, get to see his family, and maybe he'll have a hat trick game down in Tampa and maybe kickstart something good for that second line. Because between him and Riley Smith, they haven't scored much in the past 8 games, and I think that's been a cause of concern. Although they've been playing okay, they definitely need those guys to score. The line that's really made the best effort in the last 3 games has been the fourth line. Noel Acciari, he finally got on the. He actually has scored 2 goals in the last 4. And his goal against Toronto was one of the best goals I've seen by a fourth line guy. Pretty much any guy, honestly, this year. He had the patience to wait until Nieto came across the goalie and he slammed it, roofed it right up in. It was a really nice goal. So if the fourth line can go, that's great. When the fourth line scores, they're 3-0. So fourth line magic, man. There's nothing like it. This week, the Penguins have they play Nashville on Tuesday, and then on Thursday they're down. It's a little bit of a road trip. Then they're heading down to Florida, and then back up to Philly on Saturday.
Ooh.
And then Monday, Philly at home. So it's a home and home against those Philadelphia Flyers.
And the Flyers are kind of hanging. They're hanging around. They're not completely falling apart, at least not yet.
No, they haven't. I told you that I think the Flyers are a sneaky team, especially with Carter Hart, although I see he hasn't been playing too well lately. But I was surprised by how well when I think I watched the Flyers play against the Rangers, and I was like, actually, this team isn't terrible. Oh, no, it was against Carolina. They were
Yeah,
playing against Carolina, and they played really well that time, or they're not a terrible team like San Jose or or
Right.
somebody like that, you know. So
Yeah,
I think
they're
that'll be
11-9-1. Yeah.
yeah, I think it'll be a good test for both teams to play a home and home. Maybe we can get some of that rivalry going. Sidney Crosby gets a hat trick in Philadelphia, and they start throwing batteries at him and shit. That'd be great.
Oof. Well, I hope we don't hit him. I don't want anybody to get hurt.
But yeah, that's the Penguins. I mean, they're exactly where I thought they would be. They got 18 points at the quarter mark. 20 games in, you know, it's an 80-game season, 82-game season. So you can count the next game as the quarter mark if you want. I count the 20th, and then I'll count the 41st game as the half mark. So I'll get that extra game in the next set of 20 games. So it should be interesting. They got a lot of games coming up in the 20 games. I was setting my schedule up like I do for everything. I got my notes here. And I was setting up the next 20 games, and I was looking at the schedule, and it's brutal. It's brutal. The next 20 games, it's a lot more difficult than these first 20 games. So we'll see what happens with the Penguins, but I expect them to get the power play together somehow. I don't know how they're going to do it, but when I figure it out, you'll be the first to know. And don't forget to stop by on Tuesday night. It's an 8:00 game, so probably won't be on the air till about 11 or 11:30. So it's going to be a little bit of a late night for the Hockey Jesus. So say a little prayer for me.
We always do, Hockey Jesus. We always do, and we are.
Here's a
spirit in the sky. Very nice, Mark.
Okay. I'm sitting here like, what is going on?
It's here? My entry music, I guess.
What in the heck is going on? That's great. I love it. Yeah. So listen, guys, remember that Hockey Jesus preaches on the podcast after every Penguins game. You can find it, the Sports Porch podcast, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get your freaking podcasts. Please subscribe. Please leave a review. We would love that. Hockey Jesus segments are some of our most listened to segments. Lots of our fans love them. And what's not to love about Hockey Jesus? Seriously.
I mean, especially when I'm inebriated at the game. I mean, those had to be fun.
I could tell when Hockey Jesus is actually at the games, he does intermission reports. And as the intermission reports went on, his word selection became more and more limited.
It felt that way. Let's just put it that way.
All right. And one closing statement here. I want everybody to watch Bye Bye Barry, which is the new Barry Sanders documentary.
Oh, yeah. Gotta watch it. It's excellent.
Where is it on? I can't remember.
Amazon. I believe it's
Prime.
Amazon Prime.
Bye Bye Barry. For those of you who always wondered why Barry Sanders walked away at the height of his career, they actually interview him, and he talks about why. He talks about what he did. But the coolest thing about it is
he doesn't actually tell you, by the way, so don't be surprised.
He doesn't really tell you.
You'll know why at the end, but he doesn't tell you.
Yeah, but here's the interesting thing. Mark and I have always had this discussion about Barry Sanders when we talk about the greatest running backs of all time. And for the record, I think he was the greatest running back I ever watched. But Mark's whole thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he's always like, yeah, Barry Sanders, like it was like 2-yard run, -1 yard run, 3-yard run, 7-yard run, 68-yard touchdown. Not true at all. When you watch this documentary, the number of incredible runs he had, it is endless. They never show the same highlight twice. It is ridiculous. The way this guy ran the ball, and he was at the top of his career and only about 1,500 yards shy of Walter Payton.
Yeah,
and he hung it up. He would have, without question, he would have blasted through that record. So anyway,
no Emmitt Smith.
If he had no offensive line, dude. Okay, so
Maybe that's why he had all those negative runs.
Yeah, and DG says because he was tired of losing with the Lions. So anyway,
that's part of it.
He quit. He's a quitter.
Yeah, he's a he is definitely not a quitter. Listen, thank you for watching the Sports Porch live on the internet, live streaming on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and all over the world. And of course, we drop this podcast right after the show. We drop the podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get your friggin' podcasts. And you can always review us, give us a review, and subscribe to the podcast to catch up. And you can visit us online at theporcheslive.com, theporcheslive.com.
theporcheslive.com.
Thanks, Mike Lawrence. Good show. Thank you. All right, guys. We'll catch you next week.
Catch you next week, Pittsburgh. Sounds like a wounded pirate.
And that's it.
All right.